Hi, welcome. My name is Michelle Parmalee. I am the Chief People and Purpose Officer of Deloitte Global. We are coming to you live from Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum to discuss career aspirations, education, and the workforce of the future. I'll be moderating today's conversation, and I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our three panelists. Let me introduce each of them. Our first panelist is the OECD's Director for Education and Skills, Andreas Schleicher, and primary author of the newly launched report, Dream Jobs, Teenagers, Career Aspirations, and the Future of Work. And this report is the focus of today's discussion. Next up is WEF Global Shaper and Chief Ecosystem Officer at Spark Education, Brittany Singh Williams, who is both an educator and a global education strategist. And finally, next to me is Nick Chambers, CEO of Educations and Employers and a co-author of today's report. Today's discussion will focus on an issue which is top of mind for many attendees here at Davos this week. With the world of work changing at an unprecedented rate, many are concerned that young people are going to be left behind by the jobs of the future, the jobs of 10 to 20 years from now. A recently released report by the OECD, again, Dream Jobs, Teenagers' Career Aspirations, and the Future of Work, address this issue, raising the urgent need for immediate and sustained action. I'm going to let our panelists tell us a bit more about the challenge and the report itself. So, Andreas, perhaps you can kick us off by telling our audience more about the report, its findings, and its conclusions.
Yes, thanks so much, Michelle. When we launched OECD's results from PISA, everybody was looking at what young people know and can do, and of course that's so important. But PISA also provides the world's largest data set on the aspirations that young people have for their future, the careers they expect to be in by the age of 30, and how they see their future of education. And then, we can look at how this has changed over time and how it squares with what we know about the future of work, and also how it's sometimes distorted by gender, social background, things like this. Now you can say, well, 15-year-olds, how can you expect 15-year-olds know about their future career? And of course it's true. But at the same time, many of the most important career decisions you don't make at the end of schooling when we talk about those things. You do make them actually in the first year of schooling. Now, when you actually, decide how seriously are you going to engage yourself in education, what kinds of fields of study do you like, the kind of people you bump in. I mean, all of those factors are just hugely influential. We're not just talking about school, we're talking very much about role models as well on this. So it's very relevant to look at this at the age of 15. And so let's have a look at some of the data which you can actually download from the website together with the PowerPoint, which you find in the comments section, and I'm going to refer to some of that. So first of all, on slide 7, you can see that over half of 15-year-old girls aspire to be in just 10 jobs. And like teachers and doctors are the most popular ones. And what is striking is that most of them are actually 19th or 20th century jobs. Very few aspire to 21st century jobs by the age of 30. It seems that what we know about the future of work somehow doesn't make its way into classrooms and experiences of young people. Again, if you want to change this, it is about bringing employers, schools much, much closer together. What is also clear is that in some countries, the jobs cited most by young people, both boys and girls, are also the jobs that are actually at a pretty high risk of automation today. That risks tend to be somewhat lower in some of the English-speaking countries, but if you look to Japan and Slovak Republic on the other end, sort of the risk of automation of the jobs that young people are looking for is very, very high. Second thing that you can see is that while the world has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, the world of work, actually the career expectations of 15-year-olds have stayed remarkably the same. It's the same kind of jobs that you could see people citing 20 years ago that they cite now. If anything, the career expectations of young people have become more concentrated. You can see the world of work becoming more diverse, but actually what young people see is becoming more myopic, more concentrated. And again, many accessible and also well-paying jobs do not make it into the imagination of young people. And when you look at this more closely, you can see that the growing concentration in career expectations is driven by also expectations of disadvantaged and boys. They're actually becoming sort of even more concentrated in this. So disadvantaged and poor performers have become, in a way, more myopic about their perception of the world of work. There are interesting exceptions to this as well. We are here in Switzerland today, in Davos, and actually this is a country where students have quite a broad and varied view of the future, and perhaps, because Switzerland does a lot to bring the world of work early on into schools. Now, young people, vocational education and training is a credible career choice. So there may be reasons behind that, but again, it varies across countries. Now, one of the things that struck me most when we sort of saw those data for the first time is that there are many high-performing students who do really well on the test, who have still very low career expectations for themselves. So many high performers do not aim high in their lives. If you look at slides 18 to 20, for example, you can see that particularly high performing youth from disadvantaged backgrounds are 4 times less likely to hold high educational occupational aspirations. That is because they do not have those experiences. They do well on the test, they learn a lot in school, but they do not know how that translates in a future career. And it's not just social background that distorts career expectations. Gender is as powerful. Boys and girls have quite distinct, dreams for their occupational future. And I'll give you an example. Take a boy and a girl who do both well on the PISA mathematics and science test. So great potential to become the future engineers. But it's largely the boys who aim for that career, very, very few girls. And the same is true, it would be the opposite on health-related occupations. So again, gender is a very, very powerful factor here. And again, has to do with role models, not with the knowledge and skills. In fact, schools have done quite a good job in giving boys and girls now the same science skills. Very different from 20 years ago. But at the very same time, it is very, very different when it comes to career expectations. Young people's potential can also be compromised by confusion about careers. What we see among disadvantaged young people particularly is that if they do aim high occupationally, often they do not see the educational pathways that will get them there. So you have people who become managers and professionals, but they do not know that actually that requires, studying hard in school, getting into higher education. So those people are going to face a quite bumpy transition into the world of work. And again, you can see boys disadvantaged here quite in trouble. Now, there's a lot we can do about this. That's what the report really highlights, particularly effective career guidance. It's about showing role models. It's about integrating the world of work and learning. That gives young people a kind of reflection on who they are, who they want to become. By seeing this, also seeing a different kind of range of jobs in your schooling life helps you see through the kind of gender and social stereotypes that often frame occupational choices. So career guidance is very, very powerful kind of work. Experience of the world of work can give young people, a sort of a better understanding of the knowledge and skills they require. And if you have never met an engineer, why would you study science? Those things are really important, can be done. And actually, we have also some really interesting data on this in the report. Good news is that actually career guidance is more popular now than it was 20 years ago. So there's been some good change also since 2006. But it's still less than 40% of 15-year-olds on average who participate in even simple activities. Think like visiting a job fair, looking things up on the internet, speaking to a career counselor. So it's less than 1 in 2. And again, children from disadvantaged backgrounds who need that kind of guidance most are the ones who participate least in that. The data in slide 31 also show that it can really make a difference. For example, where students had more career guidance activities, they actually have a wider view of the world. They see more jobs, more possible kind of futures for themselves. Their career expectations were less concentrated. So that's the first thing that career guidance can really do, open people's eyes, get people motivated. And that relationship is actually strongest with internships. That's one of the factors that actually stands out in the report. But also less time-consuming activities can be useful, like job shadowing, attending job fairs. All of that has been associated with the range of aspirations that young people have. Also, PISA shows, and that's interesting, a very clear relationship between participating in career guidance and actually taking school seriously. So most students who had experience in the world of work saw the value of school for their own future. So again, and that's something that's going to motivate young people to do well. And last but not least, we don't only know that career guidance is important, we actually have also some good insights on how to do this well. If you look at effective career guidance, starts early. Again, some of the most important decisions about your future you make in the very first days of schooling. You can connect classroom learning with the future economic lives. You can get people trustworthy information about the labor market. You can talk a lot, but it's actually when you experience this that you can see the world of work. The asymmetries and information that I spoke to, social background, gender, is a good way to see through this. It broadens understanding about the labor market. I think sort of many good examples on this. The last point just to make is, none of this works without employers being on board. That's where the experiences come from. Career guidance, an abstract in the school is far less powerful than than when it takes place through close interaction between employers and schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a great summary, Andreas, of your key findings, and we'll dive into them a bit more during this discussion. I want to give Brittany and Nick a chance to share your perspectives. Next, over the past few years, there's been a lot of discussion about the changing world of work and what it requires young people to be ready for jobs. Brittany and Nick, from your experience of working in education, what have you learned about what it takes for young people to succeed, and how can we help them set realistic expectations of the world of work? And Brittany, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me, and I'm so excited to be here. Really, it takes a holistic approach, I think. I think we have to begin to see teaching and learning as beyond the classroom doors. Everyone has to see themselves as stakeholders of teaching and learning. And that's how we create ecosystems that will help our young people to thrive. We really have to focus a lot, as the studies show, on coaching and mentoring and opening our young people's eyes to what exists out there for them to make the best decisions. I'm a firm believer that as we grow, as from children all the way up to adults, we're getting data that contributes to who we become. We're taking little pieces from all of our experiences to create an idea of the place that we want to, the role we want to play in the world. And so if we limit our children's experiences to just what happens in the classroom, then it's going to make it a lot harder for them to see where they fit in the world.
Mm-hmm. Nick?
I would support that, the holistic approach. I think for young people, it's giving them a wide range of experiences. And experiences may not get through their sort of family background. Mm-hmm. If you think about the decisions in your lives, and a lot of those are chance meetings, they're chance connections. And for a lot of people, they have very limited options to meet the world of work. So we think it's vital that all young people from primary age get to meet a wide range of people doing a wide range of jobs and give them that authenticity. For young people, we've got these amazing opportunities, but it's very, very confusing, and they may take a particular course of action which takes a long time and costs a lot of money, and then realize there aren't any jobs at the end of it, or very few jobs at the end of it. So I think we only need to be fair to our children to give them much more information that will help them navigate this complex but actually very rewarding careers.
Now, when Andreas was talking about some of the key findings from this report, he mentioned gender and socioeconomic background being key influencers on career aspirations. Maybe talk, one of you can start. What does this report tell us, and what have each of you seen in your fields of work?
I
Go
can
ahead,
go.
Brittany.
Well, I'm from Jamaica, and it's has a very different our research is very different because our issue is actually with our boys more than our girls. Our boys tend not to aim for the higher jobs. I actually was teaching a class some time ago, and I found that the girls I had given them assignment to plan a business and how they were going to achieve that goal. And all the girls decided they were going to have their own business. They're going to work their way up and plan their budget. And all the boys in my class said, I'm going to ask my mom to just bake a cake and sell it. And I was like, this is very interesting. So it was just alarming for me to see live and direct how boys are very different from girls in terms of how they see work and how they're going to achieve what they want. So I find that the boys felt that things were just going to work out and they were going to use what was available to them, and the girls felt more that they had to put more effort into their journey. So that was very interesting to me. So I think as the studies show, girls and boys do think differently about work, and also where you come from, because if you come from a socioeconomic background that does not give you a lot of opportunities, you're not going to even know what to strive for or have any role models to look to. And I think as we move forward, we really need to be clear on what jobs are going to exist. I think that I think children need to see it and know what's going to happen. Oftentimes we're speaking a lot of the future of work, and the jobs today won't exist tomorrow, but we need to also talk about what jobs will be there and be very clear.
Yeah, I think our data actually mirrors what you say, that girls do at least as well, if not better, in the academic subjects in school. But that's really it. If you ask, for example, on science, do you see science as something that's going to open life opportunities for you? That's where you find the boys seeing the opportunities, the girls not. So I think actually when it comes to aspirations, gender plays a huge role. And again, you cannot be what you cannot see. If all the engineers around you are men, why, as a woman, would you invest your effort in seeing science as something that opens life opportunities? So in one way, our education systems have made huge progress in closing gender gaps when it comes to academic performance. I acknowledge that. But I don't see any change over the last 20 years in the kind of life and career opportunities. And I don't think, we should blame teachers for that. They come themselves, only from, teaching the academic subjects. It is really about, getting employers and people from real life, from civil society into schools to show young people what, the future can look like. What is also clear is that girls have more myopic views on the jobs. As I say, more than half of the girls just aiming for 10 jobs. So they see those kinds of teacher and doctor and lawyer as the opportunities. Some of them may get them, many may not. And again, I think there you can see boys for some reason do see, the real world more closely. So I think there's a lot that can be done to close gender stereotypes. I'm even more worried about the social stereotypes. Social background is an even greater determinant of, ambitions and dreams. When you think about, you come from a privileged background, you can see, higher education, the future of work. You come from a disadvantaged background. You may do well in school, but you don't have those kinds of experiences now.
Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. And a lot of this starts in primary schools. 3 years ago, we did a 2-minute video called Redraw the Balance. And we got 66 children to draw a firefighter, a surgeon, and a pilot. And out of the 66, 61 drew them as men. We then repeated a much bigger study called Drawing the Future, launched here 2 years ago with Andreas, that looked at 20,000 young people around the world drawing. And that was interesting because it showed gender stereotyping. Globally, every country had a similar issue. And a lot of the patterns of jobs, so in your report, teacher is the top choice of career, nearly the top choice of career for girls. That pattern, it starts at 7 because they see their teacher, which is normally in primary schools, is a female. So actually, what's worrying for me is to look at what this data here on 15-year-olds and then track back to what we did on 7-year-olds, and many of those patterns are ingrained. So unless we get people going into primary schools, and so it becomes the norm. I think, your point is, if you live in a middle-class family and you've got children and they go to, your friends' houses, then a lot of those will be professionals. So they'll be surrounded by all these professionals and interesting people. It'll just be normal. But if you're not in that network, how do you know? So unless people make the effort to go into schools at a young age, those kids will start ruling out options. It's not about careers advice in primary. It's about bringing the world to life. It's about giving them motivation. It's about exciting them about learning. And it's making sure they don't switch off saying, I'm from this social background, I'm a girl, I can't do that. And that happens in primary school.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out, because in many countries they don't start talking about skills and training until high school, until secondary school, and we often forget, as you said, it starts so young, or perceptions of the world and how we start to create ideas. So I love that you pointed that out. Many countries forget that detail.
Yeah.
Another finding on that from the study that Andreas pointed out is that young people's career aspirations seem to be narrowing. And I thought maybe the panel could talk more about why you think that's the case.
Yeah, that's we can only speculate really, but that's what we observe, that young people make fewer choices or have fewer kind of dream jobs. And perhaps the world of work is just becoming more confusing. It's harder to see the future these days. Now, in the past, occupational types were very clear. Today, there are new emerging jobs all the time, and perhaps, people stick more closely to what they know best when the world is changing fast. But again, it highlights that we just need to do a much better job in bringing the future work into classrooms. If young people do not see, that data scientists, is a great job, and if they have no experience to that, then it's going to be hard to change that.
I think it's also important for us to teach children how to understand themselves and dig deep and really reflect. I think reflection is very important. I can share, in my personal journey, a lot of the time, I always knew I wanted to be in education. I always knew I wanted to impact young people, but I never knew what that looked like. And to be honest, every day, every experience, I'm kind of making it up as I go along, but I'm taking the time to, reflect and know, okay, it makes me really happy when I'm in front of a family and I can pour into their lives. So I know that that's something I really want to focus on more than maybe being in the classroom. So it's really important that we teach our young people to really reflect on their journeys as well, because you have to be a little bit more intuitive to discover your path, I think, in this world now.
What's also interesting is really that some of the kind of future job, particularly in the digital field, do not actually require a very sophisticated, long degree or so. They're actually quite accessible jobs. They're not the ones that young people see. Digitalization plays a very kind of minor role in career expectations of 15-year-olds, even though it shapes their life in every shape and form.
I'd echo that. I think for a lot of students also about what the subjects they're studying is how to make them relevant. So, if you're a teacher, and I used to teach in the north of England, motivating kids as a teacher, is challenging. It's really hard to do that and to do it really well. Our teachers do such a fantastic job of doing so. But actually, to help a child who's struggling with maths to meet people, who are doing jobs that involve maths, really brings it to life. And we have actually seen research showing there's a link between people going into the world of work with improved academic attainment. Because if a young person's more excited about their learning because they can see there's a relevance to it, they're more likely to work harder, and if they work harder, they're more likely to do better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've touched on a bit. We've talked about the future of work. We've talked about needing to better match the skills that young people are developing to the future of work. What are your thoughts on what those future skills are, and how can we better develop those skills in our young people?
Yeah, the dilemma for education really is that the kind of things that are easy to teach and easy to test are precisely the skills that are also easy to digitize, to automate, to outsource. Now, that's what schools do best is actually at greatest risk of being automated. Now, it's no longer, manual jobs. It's routine cognitive skills. Now, memorizing something and expecting that's going to save you later in life. That works less and less. If you think about the skills that are mattering for the future, is first of all, non-routine cognitive skills, your capacity to solve complex problems, your capacity to imagine, to create, to build something new, your capacity to navigate ambiguity. basically, the world is no longer black and white. You often have to make difficult choices, deal with trade-off, tensions and dilemmas. Your capacity to take responsibility, to mobilize your cognitive, social and emotional resources. Now that's something that we have made in school sort of learners very passive. We teach them the established wisdom of our times. We rarely ask them to question the wisdom of our times, to see the novelty, the next opportunity. In a way, education has done well to educate, second-class robots, people who are very good at repeating what we tell them. We need to do, in a time of artificial intelligence, think about much harder what makes us human and how do we develop those kinds of human skills, social and emotional skills included, that actually are going to help people make a big difference.
Yeah, and I would say I think employers are recognizing that more too. We kind of joke that we hire people coming out of undergrad or grad, and we kind of say, you don't know anything, but we hired you anyway because we're looking for your soft skills, for that hint, right? That you are, someone that's able to be resilient, to be empathetic, to demonstrate creativity and critical decision making, even if your background and your studies isn't necessarily business. So,
and in fact, I think we should stop talking about soft skills because some of those skills, like empathy, like resilience, like curiosity, like courage, they're much more enduring than the subject matter knowledge you learn
that's
at
a better
school.
word, enduring skills.
I think I'm more worried for the people who are just studying in their academic field, even to high levels, than there's someone who goes out for vocational education and training. Those people are building. You work with real people in a real workplace. You solve real problems in a vocational program rather than a contrived kind of artificial one in a classroom. So actually, I think the future of education may look quite differently in that sense.
Yeah, and the Global Shapers community actually recently launched a paper on the future of work, and it also shows that young people also agree that they need these soft skills, and less so of a concentration area. So they know they need it, but the resources and the availability of getting that kind of training is really limited. So.
Okay, next question's around career guidance. So Andreas, your opening remarks touched on this as well. So there is clearly, this report shows a pressing need for better career guidance for young people. Talk a bit more about what is needed to bridge the gap between young people's aspirations and the jobs of the future, and what role do you think business can play in this?
Yeah, I think if we ask this to be done just in schools by teachers, we ask people to do an impossible job. Teachers themselves do not have that experience with kind of real-world careers. So bringing employers into schools is a great way. Giving young people experience to shadow jobs, to go to job fairs, or bringing job fairs into schools can be very powerful. It's really about showing role models, giving young people exposure to the diversity of jobs, seeing many different jobs, many different experiences. Helping you to see through stereotypes and all of this. But, employers, is just, one track. I even think, we all can make a huge difference. In fact, that's why I like Nick's work so much. I think when he asked, he just posted an ad, who's willing to donate 2 hours of their time per month to help young children explain their own job. Anybody in society can do that. And you got 40,000.
60,000 now.
60,000. Yeah,
going up all the time. Volunteer today.
It really shows the resources that we have are endless. It's not just employers, businesses. It's anybody who can do that job. You can help young people see the future. And we are very good in school to keep students inside and the rest of the world outside. And I think we need to break those kinds of walls through employers, but also I think civil society, everybody.
Right. Just in addition to that, I think that we need to actually do some work on reminding all the stakeholders involved in education that they actually are stakeholders. Oftentimes we just, go about our regular lives and forget that we actually do play a role in educating our young people. Even parents often don't even know what role they play, and they're their children's biggest advocates. So we have to also have some parenting programs that enlighten them on the opportunities as well. So beyond businesses, as you pointed out, is all the stakeholders, but creating that awareness.
I think a number of things. I think firstly we need to start young in primary. Secondly, more support for careers guidance, because we need to help schools to navigate. Look at improved labour market information so that children know what jobs are out there and can make informed decisions. People often say that kids from disadvantaged families have low expectations. That's not often true. They have high expectations, but they may be very narrow. So a lot of people want to aim to be a sports star or a model, or a singer. Now, some of those are great, aspirations. My own nephew wanted to be a footballer and nearly got there but didn't. But he also knew that he should study subjects, and he studied maths and did well at it. So I think it's giving children a sort of ideas of, yes, you could try for this career, and there's no point, if you want to be a first division footballer, fine, but the odds of doing that are whatever, 10,000 to 1. But also keep all your other options open as well. So it's about sort of broadening those horizons. And, for parents from disadvantage, it's not that they don't want the best for the children. It's just they don't know. So a lot of them go back to what they do know, what they see on TV or social media or their background. So I think some of the events we've done in primary schools in the UK and Primary Futures, we've actually brought parents in. We did a lovely event in Northern Ireland, a really deprived community there, where the parents actually came in and saw the young people meeting people from the world of work. And for them, they saw the kids being excited, because they were nervous. They didn't quite know what to do. No reason why they should know. How should they know how to navigate the world? But actually they gave them confidence, and then the children had a conversation, and I think that's got to start. So I think it's a holistic approach, very much so.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, final question for each of you to ring in on, please. So we are all from different sectors, but whether from business, from nonprofit, from education, it'll be imperative that all groups work together to address the skills gap and help align young people's aspirations to the jobs of the future. What are each of your thoughts on how we can take action together moving forward?
Yeah, no, I'm working in an international organization in the field of education in the OECD, and I think what we can do and should do is to create a broader conversation about the what question in education. We debate a lot about the how, hiring teachers, organization, learning environments, but I think we spend too little time on the what question. What is it that is going to prepare young people for their future? Now, there's a great risk that we educate the next generation for our past and not for their future. And I think, again, creating that conversation with employers, creating that conversation with, civil society, to think really hard about, the what, and then to design curricula that embrace a kind of broader sets of future. That's certainly something. The other thing I think that continues to be really important is to make outcomes better visible. As long as schools are just, or students are just evaluated on a very narrow set of academic kind of performances, they're not going to see those other dimensions. Now, if you go to an elite private school, the big differentiator is often not learning outcomes. Actually, test scores are not very different from private schools and public schools. But what they give you often is that other part, the social networks, the kind of focus on character and social emotional skills. And I think what we as parents aspire for, for our own children is what we should give to every child. And I think we can. I think modern education can be about this. So I think from my perspective, I think that conversation is critically important.
In the Caribbean, I'm not sure anywhere else in the world if they say it takes a village to raise a child. Yes, okay. I think that we have to really remind people, take some time to remind, as I said before, all the stakeholders involved in the teaching and learning experience, that they do play a role, and continue to empower people to contribute to that role, so that we can collect data and information, so that we can even report what the actual jobs of the future will be. I think many businesses need to take some time to reflect on what it is that their needs are for the future, so that we can be a little bit clearer to inform our young people. I would also say that we just really need to focus on holistic coaching from primary school, and really looking at how children learn in a